What's up, everybody? My name is Indy. Oh, I scared Jay there. My name's Indy. You look up, you're like, whoa. And we better unmute over in the Discord. There we go. What's up, everybody? My name's Indy. And that is Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting from the Powell Group sitting there next to me. And welcome to Indie Game Business. Today we've got Ben Kvalo. So I say the wrong part of it wrong. Kvalo. And we are talking about unlocking success. This is the title, Indie Game Publishing's Promising Future. And you know what's super interesting is over the course of the next few weeks, not next week, of course, but because that's Gamescom, we're going to be talking a lot about indie game publishing. So that's super interesting.
That's news to me. That's awesome. Ben, welcome to the show. We're going to start where we always do. Tell us how you originally got into the industry and then walk us through your career up to this point.
Absolutely. So I'm originally from just north of Madison, Wisconsin. So I went to school at UW Green Bay. Original plan was to go into sports management, and that did not work out well. But I started a radio station in college, went into radio shortly after college, really did not like it at all, and then got recruited by a company called 2K, which at the time was a pretty small video game publisher that was just starting to put out some pretty risky titles at the time. So I came on as their first operations person besides our executive team, and really worked from there to build out our central operations group or central technology operations group and the global marketing organization. And I spent time traveling to London and Paris and Madrid and Munich and Amsterdam and Singapore, and really learning the nuances and challenges in the video game space globally. And then did other random things for our COO and president, including like board of directors presentations, game pitches, building studios. And so that was really kind of the base layer of how I got into the industry, learning the many different areas, working with developers and working with a number of other other folks just from around the industry and in a growing org. And so it was a fun time to be able to work on things like Borderlands and BioShock and NBA 2K as it grew into what the giant sports franchise that it is today. I went from there and went to Blizzard and checked out and dipped my toes in esports, which was a fun time, especially in that era where esports was really starting to grow. Blizzard and Activision were heavily invested. Overwatch League was just starting up. We had just built the Overwatch Arena in Burbank. And so I was leading the BlizzCon piece of that and really bringing together all of the esports into one event at BlizzCon, and we had 6 broadcast stages focused on esports during that event. So I led that for a while, and then I went to Netflix. I was the first hire onto the marketing operations team for films, so I jumped into films and helped to build the infrastructure around that, led marketing campaigns for things like Bird Box and Extraction and Army of the Dead and Mitchell's vs. the Machines, Don't Look Up, and like 50 other films during that time. It was a lot of volume and a lot of really valuable lessons on how to scale your business. And then we got this opportunity that Netflix wanted to get into games. So I joined right away on the games side of things. I was one of only a few folks from the company that had worked in games previously. And so joined that and really grew it all the way through our product launch, through figuring out how we release games, what is our style, how do we develop as a publisher. And so for a long time, like I was known for some of my, more sarcastic comments on LinkedIn, like when I said, wait, Netflix has games, which is what a lot of people were saying at the time. And so got to build that from the ground up, which was a unique experience and really exciting things happening over there. And then decided to leave that all and build my own company, which I'm in the process of building right now, which is a video game publisher focused on supporting underserved developers in regions like the Midwest.
Awesome. All right, so do me one quick favor. Pop over on the Discord and right click on my name and then completely mute me from your side. That way we don't get an echo.
Completely mute you. You should be muted, but
Just drag my volume all the way to the bottom.
okay. We good now?
We'll find out. That's okay. All right. So you're announcing the publishing company soon.
Yes.
So we can't really say you're founder or CEO of X company because that's yet to be revealed. I know the answer to this, but for everyone else, why the Midwest?
Yeah, so there's a number of reasons. One, I'm from the Midwest, and I want to see games succeed in a larger way here. It has a strong history of success. Midway was here for a long time, created incredible titles like Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam and NFL Blitz and Cruisin', the Cruisin' series, and many others. But they went out of business in 2009 and sold all their assets to Warner Brothers. So for me, it was seeing that there wasn't any other dedicated publishers in the Midwest and seeing an opportunity to be able to better support developers that could be succeeding if they had the support from a funding end of things, from a support layer of production, QA, localization, marketing. And so with that being my background, I just saw a unique opportunity for me to come back and provide, everything that I've learned in my network and try to establish things back to what it was when Midway was a prominent player in the space.
We were in a completely different conversation. We actually had that talk on a personal level with several Midway execs because we're hitting the point of the industry where the newer folks coming in don't really even know who Midway was.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my God, I'm old. That's just the bottom line is I'm old. There is a lot of stuff that comes out. I mean, there's a lot of good developers in the Midwest. And so are you going to be focusing on just development from that region or expanding it, or what's the deeper strategy in supporting that part of the US?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity in this region and many others in the United States and outside of it, because there is talent everywhere. And for us, it's really about being able to just better serve that talent. And so our bet is that by being here, we will have some advantages with that. And so that's what I'm really just excited about is the ability to look at a region like the Midwest and just ultimately prove out, hey, there's talent here that are doing incredible things, have incredible games, and are just overlooked and undervalued when the reality is they're just as talented as anybody else anywhere.
All right, Discord's saying that you're still echoing, but I don't see you echoing on here, so no idea. Anyway, all right. You've gone from the AAA world with 2K, BioShock, all those great games, over to Netflix, which mobile-esque. It's hard to put the Netflix stuff into a sincere category, and now you're going to go into indie publishing. But now I'm saying, all right, Dan, pop in and explain because I don't know how to fix it anymore. All right.
All right, so Ben, over in the Discord,
Yep.
If you see how there's all three of us at the top?
Yep.
If you right click on Jay,
yep,
then there should be like a mute ticker.
Yeah, I got it muted, and I got his user volume all the way down.
Okay, well, something's happening then. I don't know what to tell you. It's just going to echo, or we can just stop it over in Discord. It's up to you, Jay.
It'll echo. All right. So What changes in the market are you seeing because obviously you could have gone in and said, okay, I'm going to aim for bigger titles, or I'm going to do more mobile publishing, that sort of stuff. Why indie games, and what opportunities are you seeing there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been cool seeing kind of the intersection at Netflix. We were able to take, indie games, but also like non whatever's considered indie games and bring them on the same platform. There's a large opportunity since the industry is consolidating in the way that it is, that the indie space is where innovation comes from and where opportunity comes from. And so for me, I just see, if we want to make big differences and change the industry and challenge the industry and grow the industry, it's going to come in the indie space. And so how do we better support that space? Because, some of the biggest games in the world are all, people don't consider it anymore indie games, but all of them are like indie games. There's the fewer AAA games that are required to have bigger success than ever before. And so there's just a lot of the money that being pushed towards less. And if we can add some money towards indie AA games, I think we're going to find that that's where innovation is going to happen. And then, AAA will copy from there. But that's just where I lean, is where is the innovation happening? And it's happening in the indie space.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that on the show before. You're not going to see, Activision, EA, THQ throw a bunch of risk into some new type of game. Look how long it took anybody to start doing battle royales, even after PUBG and Fortnite got huge, and then they're like, oh, well, maybe we should try this. Because I mean, I agree with you 100%. The indie teams are the ones taking the risks and doing the new stuff, and it's only after it gets picked up that the big AAAs start diving into it. So I know we're going to have a bunch of questions coming in shortly. So for everybody out there, if you're on Discord, if you're on YouTube or Twitch or wherever you're watching us, if you've got questions about publishing, pitching, working with publishers, this is your chance right before Gamescom to get those questions in there. So when you're looking at games that are being submitted and the things that you're possibly going to publish, what are you looking for? What are those things in a submission or in a pitch that make everything stand out and go, oh my God, I need to look at this?
So I really look at, what are they doing in the market they're trying to hit, differently or uniquely, or just skills wise and their ability to execute. You just see so many different kinds of games that might be in the same genre, and ultimately I just am like, hey, does the developer have the ability to hit that market in a way that is going to penetrate it enough and resonate with an audience, and then is that market also big enough from an amount perspective, where how much that game costs is worth the market you're going after? Because there's some niche markets that if the game can hit that entire market, awesome, like it's great, and if it has that potential, then we will invest in something that might be in a niche market. But if we don't feel like it can hit that and it is niche, like that's where there's a lot of challenges. And so, in pitches, I think some of the biggest things I look for is somebody that just really has a vision laid out. They know what their game is. They know what they want to do. They know how they want to hit their market, and they know their market. And they know that their game needs to cost a certain amount to make it make sense in that market. And so when you're going through and looking at your games, like that's a big piece. It's just really knowing the market you're going after. Because some people can accidentally like hit a market that they didn't realize they were hitting. But if you have intent behind it, you might expand your market outside of it as well.
We had this conversation last night with some friends of mine, and he said, what's the biggest thing you've seen in the market? And I was like, it's indie studios who are coming up and creating games that are competing. And I brought up the battle bit. I was like, you got a game that's like absolutely killing it on Steam, and it's 3 people that made it. And that's the sort of stuff that you're not going to see I mean, it's always entertaining to me to see an indie team like that beating out the Battlefield series, which is what it was all based on. You brought up cost, and that's always a good argument. What do you feel is the prime range for the price of an indie game?
That's tough because it all, the easy answer is it always depends on the game, right? It's hard to bucket it in until you look at the title and say, okay, this is what it is. But you can always compare it to the potential of the genre, what other similar games have sold in that genre. If you have a genre where the highest end version of it has only sold like 2 million units compared to another genre that sold 20 million units, it's easy to argue that okay, well, you can spend more on something that has a comp that has sold 20 million units. But I really look at it like if we can hit anywhere south of $1 million or maybe 2 million as you get into the more AA space. I think you have a unique opportunity as long as it has the market ahead of it to hit the market in a strong way and not overspend on and add a lot of risk, like what happens in AAA, where they spend so much money they have to insure it, and the marketing budgets get bloated, and you get a lot of things that just aren't necessary and don't innovate, and they just copy a lot of the things that have already been done because that's been proven out, and there's just so much risk they can't risk more by doing something really innovative. And so that's where like this 100,000 to 1 million space is really a really interesting space for me.
All right, so and we've got questions coming in here fast and furious all of a sudden. So Sam from YouTube, do you plan on extending the "we have good but overlooked opportunities in the region" mentality to other regions and countries as well?
Yeah, I mean, that is where I see a huge opportunity. Obviously, we're starting and focus in the Midwest because Midwest is like last, and so like take the one that's in last and prove it out, and then you can see other places. But there's a lot of opportunities. There's opportunities in South America. There's opportunities in Africa. There's opportunities in Eastern Europe. There's opportunities in Mexico, Canada. There's plenty of overlooked places. Again, talent is everywhere. We're in an industry in the globe that you don't have to have some of the infrastructure that something like I've worked in films. There's a certain amount of infrastructure you have to have, which is why it's so challenging for the films industry to move to these other places. Games is not the same, especially these days. You could argue maybe 5-10 years ago it was a little bit different, but especially post-COVID, we're in a whole new world where anybody can do great work anywhere in the world, and we just need to give more opportunities to those people.
I agree wholeheartedly. All right, so from Discord, a very straightforward question: where and when can we reach out with our pitch to you?
There will be more news coming up, but LinkedIn is a great place to start. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Ben Kvalo in the world, so it's really easy to find me. My last name is so rare, so you can always reach out on LinkedIn. Just know I get a lot of messages. I try to always respond. It's just sometimes difficult, but then there'll be a lot more information coming soon. So just kind of pay attention, and obviously you'll see any announcements on my LinkedIn as well.
All right, so you mentioned that developer having a clear vision for their game. How do you know if they have a clear vision from the pitch that you get?
I mean, the pitch deck is usually pretty telling. It's if someone has a clear vision of it, they're hopefully able to articulate it in a way in a pitch deck that tells me, okay, like this is what they want to do, this is how they want to do it, and this is the direction that they're going. And so you can usually tell via pitch deck. Now, it's not always the case. Sometimes you have to play a demo. or a prototype of some sort, and then you can see, oh, I see what they're trying to do here. Maybe they didn't articulate it well in the pitch. And so giving a number of different routes to try and give your vision, because everyone can speak different languages or lean heavy in different areas. Some people are really good at pitches, some people aren't. If you can give multiple ways for someone to see your vision, I think that's always beneficial, just because everyone is a little bit different.
So you mentioned, this is from Binary Clone on Twitch, you mentioned pitches where the indies know their market really well. In terms of publishing, do you think that market knowledge can also be something the publisher helps bring to the table? I think a lot of indies have great games, but go to publishers in large part to help them with the marketing and market knowledge, not just funding.
1,000%. It's not about you knowing exactly what you have to do from the indie end. Like, in fact, the publisher should be able to look at something and say, okay, yeah, I get where you're going. Here's where our expertise can help you. That's ultimately the value of a publisher. It's just getting to the point that you have enough there that you can get them to see it and then take it to that next level. But absolutely, that's the whole point of a publisher, is being able to up level and support a developer. I think some publishers might not always see it as that support layer, but I really believe that the great publishers out there, and there are a lot of great publishers out there, want to provide the resources and support to ultimately uplift that vision that is coming in and saying, hey, what if we did it this way, it would be even better. Or if we need to add some art outsourcing, or maybe we need to add additional languages that we weren't initially planning for. And so a publisher should bring those expertise to the table.
So how important is that section of a pitch deck where the developer is putting their projections? Because we see this a lot in decks that come through. The developers are like, okay, this is what we've seen in the market, and this is, what our anticipation is for the sales on the game. How important is that versus what you're doing on your own internally?
Yeah, it's really important, just because it gives a good idea of what your plan is. It doesn't mean a publisher wouldn't give a ton of feedback back on that, but it's just more so that it gives us a good idea of at least what your plan is, and then we can figure out and give you feedback on certain things. I think some of the most valuable pieces are the folks that are willing to take on feedback and think about things differently as you go, because I've had pitches where I'm like, hey, have you thought about doing it this way instead, or spending your resources this way, or instead of having some resources dedicated to this area, dedicating it elsewhere, and having that discussion. And the developers that are open to that discussion and just want what's best is great. But sometimes you also have to make sure you continue down your vision and not be pushed too far in a direction that a publisher might want, which might actually push you away from what the game you're trying to make is. So it's always a balancing act, and I think it's just a really good discussion piece, so that a publisher and developer can make sure they're on the same page. And if they're not on the same page, that's probably not the right publisher for you. Or for us, that might not be the right developer for us, and that's okay too. Sometimes these things don't match up, and it's okay to move on to the next.
So from Lee over on YouTube, hey Lee, how you doing, dude? What are your thoughts on a developer using Steam Next Fest for a vertical slice demo versus saving it for an early access launch? Can you think of any negative or positive publisher side effects? I can't read today, but yes.
I mean, I can't read it every day. So yeah, there's good and bad to both things. I mean, I think everyone has seen good examples of using Steam Next Fest for a demo, and probably some bad examples. And the same with early access. I think the thing that a publisher would look at is, what was the momentum you got off of that, and was it worth it compared to holding back and doing a bigger moment later, that can really drive as much of the audience. There's so much content, whether it be games, films, TV shows, music, out there in the world that it's easy to get distracted, and I have ADHD, so it's really easy for me to get distracted at times. And so it's like, how do you create a moment that immediately drives in? And some of the stuff, like some of my previous experiences, some of our best campaigns, and especially from a marketing lens, were ones that were really short, where we had a huge moment and it led right into the launch of whether it be an early access or the full game or a film or whatever it is. Sometimes that short time span is much better than elongating something and trying to keep momentum over a long period of time. So there's good and bad to both. And I think it's just making sure you have a strategy around what you're doing. And as long as you do, it can succeed. And guess what? The best strategy in the world might not succeed either. So don't be afraid to do some of those things, and then have an honest discussion with a publisher later, if that's the route you're going.
You're in good company with the ADHD. At some point, I want to see a statistic on how many of us in the industry are on the neurodiverse pattern, because I'm sure it's like north of 80%. I mean, because all of us, it's like how we all end up in this industry for some reason. And yeah. All right. So from Binary Clone on Twitch, do you see any opportunity in the sub $100,000 budget range? Of course, that's a pretty small space, but I know there are indies working solo or in very small teams with projects that are more mature, looking for smaller sums to get over that finish line. Getting the polished professional artwork or music, is that a space that you are open to exploring?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like if there's talent, there's opportunity, there's there's an interesting game. Yeah, some folks, really bootstrap. It's so similar to the investment space, where some folks will bootstrap something, all the way until they get to the funding piece of it. And they might bootstrap it still from there as well to get a higher percentage of their company over the long span. And so it's just there's absolute top-notch games in that space that I think have a lot of opportunity. The caution with it is, if you undersell like your amount, you have to be careful. Like, underpaying developers is not something that I'm a big believer in. I think it creates toxicity of and devalues the incredible talent of developers by saying, oh, well, we can do it for this really cheap price. And then you ultimately are just barely getting by. And that's not what I want to see in the industry. I want to see a healthier ecosystem where we pay developers what they're worth. And so sometimes, I've said it to developers, is you should increase the amount that you have, because what you're trying to do is worth that. And like, you don't want to devalue yourself. And yeah, some publishers might say no to that because it doesn't fit in their range. But I think in the long run, it benefits you more to just make sure that you're getting paid what you're worth. But it's a challenging space because not everybody like approaches it that way.
And that's an important note to point out, because I see it all the time. Indie devs come to me and they show me a project and they give me the budget, and I'm like, there's no way you can do this game for that budget. And they're like, well, somebody told us that, this is our first game and we're an indie dev and we're not going to be able to get more than this. And I'm like, that's bullshit. So yes, it is I agree. I actually gave the same advice to somebody yesterday. I told them they needed to jack up the price of their game, because you do get in situations where a publisher may look at it and go, well, if that's the budget, it's not going to be a very good game. And then you get the investor side of it too, where they're like, it's not worth us investing 50 grand into a game because we're not going to get as much out of it. So I'm glad you feel that way. I agree. All right. So from Tom on YouTube, considering the rise of indie game development and the numerous recent layoffs in AAA, do you think we are living in a golden era for creating and publishing indie games?
It's a really interesting question. It's not, just layoffs in AAA. It's layoffs in every business around tech and games and every angle of everything. I think, yeah, it creates opportunity because, you know, folks are outside of their comfort zones. Like when you get in a company, and I've been there, on that's a big corporate, you know, company, and you get a steady paycheck, and you don't all like you get, you know, your job, you do your job, you do it well. You don't have to really think about it. Right now, so many people, and plenty of people I know, have had to go through this scenario of suddenly out in the wild again and figuring things out. And with that, I think a lot of people are going to go the route of creating something, whether it be new companies, games, and anything else. In fact, that's, you know, part of what I was looking at when I decided to leave Netflix was the opportunity to go create in what I agree could be a golden era of a lot of innovation. When there's so much talent out in the market that have to kind of challenge themselves because of tough circumstances. I think a lot of innovation comes from that too, as much as there's a lot of negativity that comes from it, uncertainty, and it doesn't always go that way. There'll be a lot of stories of folks getting laid off and really their life is in a tough space, and then there will be stories of people that are able to take that and overcome it and innovate and create something really incredible. So yeah, there will be more games from more developers than ever before, both from the standpoint of the fact that so many people are on the market and trying to do something new, and from the fact that technology is at a place where a lot more people can do things easier than ever before.
Chloe from LinkedIn with a question that I don't think we have ever seen before in the however many years Dan and I have been doing this. Who should be the one to reach out to a publisher? Should it be the marketing director or the producer/manager?
Whoever can get the connection, right? Some publishers are really hard to get to and connect with, and this is a business of relationships and networking. And whoever has that connection into whatever business you're trying to get in with, you should leverage that and utilize that. And so it's never any one person. Because it's just getting in, and then from there you can bring the rest of the team in or whoever you think is key. And also it depends on what game and what your angle is. You know, if what you have to sell is really like the marketing opportunity of the game, like it's really flashy in a way that it's cool, maybe the marketing director is the better one. If, you know, it's a more like, oh wow, our tech for this game is really unique, you know, like BattleBit, like the fact that, you know, a couple developers can develop something so unique and but large scale. You know, if you were to ask a lot of publishers, they would say, oh no, you can't do that with such a small team. Maybe it's that somebody from the tech end that is really should be speaking to what the game is, if it makes sense. Plus, you know, everyone's a little bit better or worse at presenting. You probably want your best presenter out there, your best salesperson, whether they're actually in sales or not. So it depends, but I think just really evaluate who can get you in with somebody in the door, and then you can always shift who that main person is at once you're in the door.
Very, very good answer. That's awesome. It is. I mean, everything in this industry is relationships. I mean, you see it every single day. Like Gamescom tip for next week. It's good to be on the floor and seeing people and doing meetings, but it's also good to be off the floor at events in the evening, just networking and introducing yourself to people. And because that's going to yield you as much business as those meetings that you're in every half hour too. So another one from the Discord, James asked, what are some ways to reduce risk for a publisher without increasing the budget? For example, adding art outsourcing, project management, QAs, etc., to adds to the budget.
Some ways to reduce risk. Yeah. I mean, it's no matter what a risky business, because you're spending a lot of money, and then need to do a very complicated thing to market. Some opportunities is just having folks with expertise in that have done it before, that have been through it before. Like if you're able to at least have somebody that has seen it, that's a way to reduce risk. Other ways are just the larger opportunities, or large opportunities outside of just the initial game launch. How can you add value with what you're selling? Like, do you have an awesome soundtrack that you could potentially sell as well? Like that could be cool. Could you do, is your game really incredible art, and that you could do something like an art book or a premium edition or something like that? That always helps, because the fans that really connect with your game will want to engage with that content. As long as you price it at a thing that proves to be valuable to that audience, then I think it works really well. What you don't want to do is have something that's not valuable and then try to sell it for a price it's not worth, because then you really can make audiences angry at you, and that's not what you want to do, especially when you're building communities. So all of those are kind of ways, at least from a publisher's end, that you could add value that reduces risk in some ways. But no matter what, we're in a risky business, and and if you're risk averse, this might not be the best route for you sometimes.
I had an investor ask me yesterday, if we invest in games, what percentage of those games are going to make money? I was like, it just depends on everything. This is not like many other industries where you can chart that kind of shit. It's just very risky. From LinkedIn, what should developers be attentive to when getting in touch with potential publishers?
Well, just know that publishers get a lot of pitches. I get multiple pitches every single day. And so it's tough, as even with the best of intent, it's tough to get back to everybody. So don't get frustrated by like the lack of response. In some ways it's similar to like hiring, when you don't hear back from, a recruiter or things like that. Like it can get really frustrating. Perseverance is really important in this industry. I've known it personally as well. So it's just knowing that and don't be afraid to follow up in a nice way, because some of those times I'm like, oh, I really wanted to respond, I just forgot and missed it. I'm glad you followed up. But always just understand where they're coming from as well, and just try to keep that perspective, which can be tough in the moment because it can be a bit frustrating. And then other things to just kind of be aware of with a publisher is sometimes you might only get one chance to talk to them. So make sure what you're presenting and showing is something that in that one chance you can catch their attention in one way or another. And sometimes that means less is more. Don't throw out everything, because that might actually overwhelm somebody that might already be overwhelmed. And sometimes just get straight to the point of what it is. And that can be the entry point that opens up a wider conversation with more team members. So those are, a couple points. I could probably come up with more, but those are good ones.
Here's another good one from the Discord. Where do solo developers stand in terms of risk versus reward for publishers? The one-person teams.
Game development is hard, and when it's only one person, like me, if I was running a publisher as just myself, like that is a lot of different hats that I have to wear to be able to do that, which is why we bring on folks that have those expertise areas. And some people are really good at like kind of a jack of all trades. In fact, I saw something the other day that like especially folks with ADHD are like jack of all trades, because they're interested in so many different things. But ultimately, the risk is that is so much on one person, and some folks have done it and they've done it incredibly well. It takes longer. it tends to be cheaper, obviously, as well. It's just it's a lot. And from a standpoint of burnout, putting all of that on your shoulders alone, and I do this a lot myself, is trying to take on too much myself. It can create burnout when you don't even realize it, and then suddenly you feel it and you hit a brick wall. And if you have commitments at that point, it's really like hard to break through that wall, because you don't feel good about anything. And it goes into the mental health aspect of things, which we always need to talk about with game development. And so it's just a lot. So that's really where the risk lies.
Next one from Discord. Wait, we've already done that one. Hold on. Never mind. Skip that one. Here we go. How polished should a game be to get you, or how polished should a demo be in order to be suitable to be presented to a publisher?
I don't think it needs to be polished. What you need is that you can like you have the loop, whatever that cell, that thing that your game is going for, you have it in place in a way that can be recognized by somebody from the outside. So like, having some user testing with friends and other things, or like getting them to like be like, oh yeah, like I get it. Like that's really what you need. It doesn't need to be polished in a major way, as long as you can show that the whatever you've created aligns with like your future vision, and it can resonate with people that aren't yourself, because we're all biased, and so we were like, well, yeah, obviously, like, why don't you get that? And a lot of people don't get that. And so I think just getting to that point is really the biggest key. So you utilizing your network, your friends, to kind of check that and make sure that you don't have a bias, and that you think, oh yeah, everyone should understand this, when in reality maybe they don't. And if they don't, just keep working on it and iterate on it, get some more feedback. Like feedback is so key to continuing to develop your vision.
All right. So what can a game development community organizer do to help studios in their area, or connect them with resources, especially in areas like the Midwest, which tend to be overlooked?
There's a couple things. There's obviously game jams are a great way to get people together, to get people connected. Supporting local community events. I was at GDEX in Columbus, Ohio, which was an awesome, industry event. And so supporting things like that. There's a bunch upcoming as well. I think next week is 2D Con in Minneapolis. Later this year is MDev in Madison. And so finding out those local events, and there's tons all over. There's a bunch of Chicago, there's a bunch of Michigan, there's a bunch, Indianapolis and other places, and engaging those like helps to bring and grow the community, because you see, oh, there is a lot here. And if you're supporting one another, you can grow together and build the community together, and also get people from the outside to come join that community, and maybe go to their first games industry event that they've ever been to. And then that opens them to this wider world that is this larger games industry, that we know a lot of these huge events, but sometimes it starts small. Sometimes it starts with a game jam where somebody does their first game jam, 48 hours, and they get introduced, and then they start down the path. Everyone's at a different point in their path on this industry, and it's okay to be at that point. It's okay to be in your first steps. And then it's okay to like engage with folks that are much further down the line, that can help give pointers so that you can continue down the path. Because this is a really incredible industry that allows for so many opportunities in so many different areas. It's so cross industry, like functional. Like I talk about this a lot, of like the games industry allows you to transfer into a lot of other industries if you don't want to stay in games, because of the technical skills, the artistic skills, the fact that you have to bring together these things that don't always blend extremely well together, and you have to figure it out, the problem solving that happens. So there's a lot of opportunities to move into other things from the game space, or move into the game space from other things because of those skill sets.
And that perfectly bleeds into the next question from the Discord. Is an advanced demo good enough to build trust for a team that has experience in other fields, but not particularly game dev?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with folks that come from other fields, whether it, that maybe they had an app that was like a gamification app, or they come from the tech field, or they come from something that's completely like different. Yeah, that always gives confidence that, oh well, they kind of know what they're doing. But I think if you're coming from outside, the willingness to learn and grow like show the ability to pivot quickly is a really important piece to this, because even if you're a veteran game dev, if you're stuck in your ways and not innovating and changing, like, you're not going to be able to do your vision of things. And so I always just look for people that are willing to grow and learn, even if they're not coming from the game space, because I was in that same area at one point. Whether it be coming from radio into video games, I said, hey, well, I've been doing these operations things. I've been building out our traffic department in radio. I've been doing these things that transfer well from an operations standpoint. And then I built my skill over time, from just operations to marketing to product management to, adding different levels of, like, we had AAA games, esports, mobile games, and just adding those things over time, but using the fact that I'm willing to pivot to something new and go from, core AAA development to esports to films to mobile-ish. It's just that showing that you can do it. And the minute you show you can do it, people have trust that you're going to be able to do it again.
All right. So along those lines, what are some of the things that you found or learned or seen in AAA and mobile that you think are applicable on the indie space that aren't being fully recognized?
Yeah, I mean, there's when you get to that level, especially like AAA and the mobile space, there's a heavy dose of data. Those folks lean into data. Some would argue too much, but they utilize that to improve their game, improve how the audience pays attention to it. So I think data is something that I think indie developers, the more you can lean into it or have your publisher lean into it, I think the better. And the better you can utilize that data quickly to pivot towards whatever it is. Maybe it's the fact that 5 minutes into the game you get a large drop off. Well, what is that? And being able to utilize that data and move quickly allows you to retain your audience for longer periods of time. And so really that's where there's a big difference, is they have, large departments dedicated to it, which is also tough. It's time consuming. It might not be your expertise. So how do you get that? Maybe it's working with a consultant. Maybe it's working with some kind of data firm or something. All of that is really potentially ways to make up for it.
And I'll apologize if anyone is trying to figure out what that sound is in the background. That's my dog snoring, because I'm watching her trigger the mic in Discord every time she exhales. I lost my comments. There we go. Yes, from Lee. Any tips or recommendations when approaching Sony or Microsoft for prototype funding? Does it benefit you if you already have a prototype and are looking to improve it with these funds?
Yeah, again, the networking piece is huge. What I'll say is, especially from the networking, get to know people before you need something from them. Otherwise, it's not very authentic. You're just coming off as like you're taking, like give before you take. And then approaching somebody like that, or a connection within the industry, or somebody that knows somebody at Microsoft, is much easier. Yeah, it always benefits to have a prototype. It always benefits to, the more you have, the better. The further along you have, the more you can say, hey, this is exactly what we need for the funding that we're going with. or that we're going down the route with, is going to help you. Like it's the again, it's like knowing exactly what you're going to be doing, your vision, how you're spending your money. All of those things are really, really valuable as you go to pitch to some of these folks. But again, it all is networking, because if you're just trying to get into the Sonys or Microsofts or Nintendos or any of these different big players in the industry, just know that there's thousands or tens of thousands of other people also doing the same thing, and the more you can leverage your network and a really strong vision, the better you have, a better chance you have of landing with them and them being really interested.
So, what are some of those things that you feel are growth opportunities? Are there genres coming up that aren't being as utilized as they should be? I saw Steam was doing a visual novel promotion, last week. Where are those areas in the industry that you're seeing the most opportunity for growth for indie teams?
I mean, indie teams have the flexibility to kind of go outside of the norm, and so yeah, it's the ability to challenge some of the things. Now, getting funding for that can always be challenging, because not everybody on, on the funding end can kind of see outside of those norms. But being able to try new things and see how it goes, you just have so much more flexibility in the indie space. Genre wise, we're seeing a bunch of new things pop up. Narrative games is an interesting space, and coming from Netflix, like the ability to blend, and have a better middle space between, a very passive experience and a very active experience, and having like something in the middle, like is super interesting for some people, for some audiences. It's just knowing that you're never going to hit everybody. So as long as you have an audience that you can go after and people that are interested in that, there are opportunities in a number of genres that maybe aren't either major right now or were in the past. Everything kind of comes back, right? We've seen a lot of successes in beat 'em ups lately, and that's a genre that's been around for forever and has ebbs and flows with the success of the titles. And I think a lot of it is just more so when you have talent and great games going into a certain genre, that genre is going to go and be amazing. There's a lot happening in the cozy space that's really, really interesting, and so kind of innovation on the cozy space, and so that is growing, but also getting very saturated. So if you want to go into it, it's going to have a lot of challenges in going into it, because there's so many other players in the space, and that's so dependent on building a community in that space.
All right, so we've got 5 or so minutes left. If you've got any questions, get them in quickly before we wrap up for the day. All right, so Binary Clone, how do you feel about modern monetization strategies as an indie publisher? Things like microtransactions, battle passes, energy systems, gotcha mechanics, etc.
Listen, I hate all of that stuff, to be just brutally honest. I love, and maybe it's just, I'm on the older end of the spectrum at this point. I love being able to buy a game and you have the game, and you have the full game, and then you can add content, and that content is worth the price that you're paying, and having an industry where that makes sense. So I'm not a huge fan. That doesn't mean that it can't work in certain circumstances. I think we just have too often folks trying to take advantage of audiences and tendencies, and and habits and addictions and things like that I just don't I don't feel good as a person doing some of those things. And so obviously with my business, I want to be investing in the areas that I think can grow. And and grow and thrive. And I feel like there's also a pendulum that is swinging back to that kind of experience where you can get full experiences. I saw it at Netflix, where when we can take a game and put it on the service at Netflix, it's a full experience, everything. There's no microtransactions. They took the game Heads Up, which, you had to buy card packs on, and put the whole thing on Netflix. And that's like awesome. Imagine not having to buy all those individual card packs. That's really great. And I think there's going to be a trend towards these premium experiences. Premium mobile, I think, is going to be a growing area. And obviously cloud is a growing area as well. I think it was earlier this week that Netflix launched their first cloud streaming game, and controller and things like that. And so all of that is really leans into the more premium experience, that you get a full-fledged game. You're not paying those microtransactions. You don't have gotcha mechanics. It's all just about the experience of having fun with a game. And it just brings us back to, why we started in games in the first place and why we enjoyed games. No one was like, oh yeah, I love games because of, all the free-to-play components.
I think I like buying a game and having it is one of the better quotes we've had on here in a very long time. So from James on the Discord, how do you balance I've identified a genre and audience that's underserved versus I know this genre really well and I like making and playing these games if they're not the same?
I mean, in my world, it's all about balance. I have to force myself to be like, I can't, for me, like I can't just go after games that I would want to play. I have to really constantly be looking at audiences. I love my role-playing games or my resource management games, things like RimWorld. I put over 1,000 hours into, because I love that kind of game. And so like I lean that way, but I just have to recognize that that's my bias. And so when we evaluate a game, I will immediately say, hey, I have a bias towards this game because I love this genre. I love it. So that, my team can balance me out and really look at it objectively, say, okay, well, here's the market and here's how we think you could hit that market and help best serve the developer. And do we have the skill sets as well? Like, are we able to best support them, or are there actually better publishers that could do better than us?
I love that because I get in that, I get in that trap myself. And it's like, well, the data doesn't really, and the market really doesn't support this type of game. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I like it. This is what I want to do.
And sometimes you have to take those bets. Sometimes you also have to say, actually, like, I just think this could really do well. And too often we lean too heavy on data and we don't follow our gut. Now, again, it's always this balance between, but sometimes your gut is telling you right. And like, if you're seeing people enjoy it and you're able to verify that in some other ways, follow your gut on some things.
It's one of those things. It's like any of us can get out there and run comps and data on Steam Spy or whatever, methodology that we're using. It's the people with the good gut that's what makes the difference in terms of getting it on board. Now, then, of course, you got to have talent on the development and publishing side. But yeah, industry is very much about gut.
Well, and the industry would be pretty boring if we only ever went with the data, right?
Exactly.
It would be all the same thing. There would be a bunch of Call of Duty clones, and that would be it.
I saw this at a pitch session last year. Developer pitched a vehicular combat game. Publisher answers, well, there's not a lot of market that we're seeing for this. And I just had to interrupt. And I went, that's because none of you will publish one. It's like, you can't sit there and say there's no market analysis for this type of genre infinitely, because if no one actually goes and does one, then it's not going to matter. Ben, this has been awesome. And I'm looking forward next week to the big announcement, so we can stop calling you Midwest Publisher Guy. Anything you want to plug here at the end? Here's your chance.
No, I just follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll just tease that there's a lot coming very soon. and we're very excited to go out in a major way, introduce a lot of things. But yeah, more to come soon. I can only say so much, obviously, so I'm being a little bit coy. But I'm excited, and ultimately for me, it's being able to support incredible developers. It's fun to be able to work with, like, I'm like a half creative, I'm a wannabe creative, but to be able to like truly like work with people with incredible visions is just it's inspiring. It makes work a lot of fun.
Awesome. We're looking forward to seeing it. Dan?
Yo, hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody. And we hope you had a blast and found our podcast enlightening. To stay in the loop with the latest industry secrets, make sure to sign up for our newsletter at indiegame.business. It's packed with exclusive tips and updates that will give you a competitive edge in your field. And if you're looking to expand your professional network and connect with like-minded individuals, you should join our Discord, discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. It's a perfect place to engage in stimulating discussions, share ideas, and collaborate with fellow gaming enthusiasts. And also, before you go, don't forget to check out our Indie Game Business merch. Yeah, I'm going to get me an IGB cap here sometime. Streamlabs.com/indiegamebusiness/merch. Your choice of fantastic merch not only brings joy to you, but also empowers us to give back even more. So indulge in the new collection and let's grow together as we fuel the indie spirit. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Ben, for hanging out. That was awesome.
I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
All right, folks. We will not see you next week. I'll be in Germany.
And
But we'll see you the
Germany,
week after that. Yes.
eating Fingerschnitzels.
Yes.
Yeah.
All righty. Have a good week.